Okay. Well, I got three awesome people. People I actually really want to like. That I know are really into the coils big time. We got David on for just a little bit. David works also in making these sacred geometrical coils. I got my friend Kilo here in the background. Kilo's helped me out in the shop as I just get back into operations up and rolling again after like a little 2+ week hiatus of like reforming my business. Anyways, what I wanted to speak to in this workshop is actually how to use these tools.
Can y'all hear me at all?
I hear you fine now. I heard the laugh.
I don't really understand what the heck is going on.
I'm hearing something coming through on there. Some background noise on you, Wendy.
Yeah, I hear a little background noise, Wendy. Otherwise, I heard you fine.
You know what? Just call me back on the phone. I'm not using the stupid computer because it's being lame. It works really.
All we really need your voice for is just to hear you ask questions, and so if you want to just listen.
If you want to watch in, Wendy, too, you can text me, and I'll ask through the phone, too, because we can...
It's more of having just a dynamic Q&A right now and seeing where it goes. I'm just going to lay a little foundation quickly. And so the last 8 years I've been studying vortex-based mathematics and knot theory and so forth in terms of understanding some fundamental principles in the universe. We can get like super heady and go like really far out there. I'm going to move so I can watch. There you go. And like, yeah, we get really heady really fast. But I want to keep this grounded. I want to keep this practical and applicable because it's not really talked about much. And more often than not, I'm trying to convince people of the practicality and the applicability and the significance of these coils. I feel like with my audience right now, I'm not convincing anyone. We're all curious. We're all at that same level. And so I want to explain some practical applications about them. And so the main coil I've been working with lately is the hexagram, the Star of David. This one's 3D printed in a stainless steel bronze mix, gold plated. There is fabrication going back behind me because we're in a creative art warehouse outside of downtown LA. So sorry for any noise that might cut in. And there's lots of different ways you can use these coils. The number one thing is understanding how they're amplifiers. They move energy, and they respond to intent. That me ringing? Oh. Wendy, don't call me at this moment. All right. Cool. Wendy just started calling me. Wendy, you just called me on a separate phone call. All right, can I hang up on this call? Or are you just going to stay right there? I can hear you. Can you go to the link in the email and come back to that? Okay, well, but you're separate from the call right now. Yeah, it's in the link's in the email. All right, that was interesting. It auto answered too. I don't know why it auto answered. So the thing about the coils is they're amplifiers of intent, and that's the most profound, simple aspect within them. And that I talk about them many times in terms of technological applications and how you can apply them. You can understand them as like a frictionless magnetic gear bearing, and you can take traditional concepts within mechanics, such as with a gear cog, and how you can couple with the magnetic polarities. There's a lot else that comes in place in understanding electricity and gravity. Those are huge rabbit holes to go down, and I'm going to keep this, again, like here and present, in terms of let's talk about what's not normally talked about in terms of the metaphysical arts. And so, did my video go away?
Yes.
There you go, I'm back. I think that video call stole my video. Hey, Wendy.
Hey,
And so, one of the most, so, there's lots of different ways you can study science. And you can have, like in my world of electrical engineering, you can use an oscilloscope to observe electrical phenomena in terms of the frequency and what's being created. At the same time, or say a magnometer to measure the magnetic field. But I can hold this coil in my hand, and I can feel the structure of that field. I can feel the quality. I can feel the quantity. And that we as individuals are fully capable of interpreting and observing and interacting with that information. One reason that we don't is because we put up a thought construct that we're not capable of doing that. And so 10 years ago I started doing energy work, and one of the profound things was holding a coil in my hand and feeling how it interacts with my awareness. And one of the simple things to observe is how fast does this respond to intent? Now, that concept is not something that's usually talked about. And so, if you're holding this coil in your hand, and let's say we're getting outside of the body, we're getting into the metaphysical realm, and that this whole room, this whole experience is all me. And so we break down the thought construct that that you're separate from the room, that you're separate from the universe. And so as you start to accept that understanding, and let you be that understanding, it also opens up your perception into understanding. We block a lot of our perception, of perceptory abilities, because that's what we think is the case. And so when I started doing energy work a decade ago, I began to realize that in the center of my hand is the palm chakra, and it's really profound in terms of the energy that moves through it. And so that is a first-hand experience. And so what I'm talking about are all my first-hand experiences in working with these coils. How does it affect my actual life? And then there's also the notion of like scientific observation. We're getting into metaphysical scientific observation, observing things outside of the five senses, which are usually considered subtle, and you wouldn't necessarily pick up normally, or science is even considered, because it's considered so subtle.
This is, if I can just interject real quick too, Gregor, what I'm hearing you saying is that as a foundation for kind of moving forward with these, we're going to get into the perceptual observation, like, and being able to suspend disbelief, or, you know, create the proper mental construct to be like, hey, you know what, this is doing something and I can feel it. Like, if it's there doing its thing, there's information there and I can perceive that information. So setting sort of like a perceptual foundation for understanding this metaphysical stuff directly.
Absolutely. And so, like, as I was saying, once I started feeling energy in my palm chakra and moving it through me, because I had the experience, it allowed me to let go of that thought construct. But it's also a paradox, because to have that experience, you also have to let go of that thought construct. And that it's like, here's a simple example. In that, like, I've started like taking on, you know, the curiosity or the intrigue, the belief system that elementals are real on the earth plane. However, that's not something we normally experience in our perceptual awareness. 2 different times I've had like interesting experiences, you could say, with elementals. One of them was like a 25-foot troll. When I saw this 25-foot troll in the woods, it was very, very brief. I was driving, and I lost my shit because it was way outside the context of my reality, way outside of it. And you could say I'm still processing that experience, even though it's happened like 2 years ago, of what really happened. And the thing is, the experience also allowed me to start let going of the thought constructs that they don't exist. However, the experience came forth when I started to accept maybe they do exist. And so the maybe even gives potential for it to come in. And so that's part of the notion of like spiritual training. You're allowing yourself to say maybe. You're allowing yourself to say it's a possibility. And then that possibility collapses into something tangible, something real, which then also encourages greater faith to let go of what's been hindering you. And so this is a whole process of letting go to open up these new potentials. And so the potentials I am talking about that you just said is this perceptual awareness. How do we allow ourselves to perceive more of what's actually around the corner? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a great place to start off as far as like, you know, having this and not knowing exactly what to do with it, but just even getting in the mindset or the abandonment of a mindset to be like, okay, I'm just going to directly feel the information without assigning any labels or understanding or expectations to it, and then just seeing what comes through that.
Absolutely. And so a great example in terms of my own process, I've been studying a lot of the 7 alchemical symbols. I'm going to see if I can get a good view. I can sort of get a good view. It seems like it's flip-flop. There's the 7 alchemical symbols with the chakras, days of the week. You got Luna, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Sol. These are 7 fundamental patterns. And the star of Mercury I'm wearing, that many people have, relates to a Wednesday in one of these 7 alchemical planets. It relates to the alchemical metal Mercury, Quicksilver. And the thing is, it's like these are 7 different flavors, and we can define them. Everything I just shared were definitions. But a very like simple metaphysical aspect without those definitions is like, how do they really feel? And there's many ways we can describe how they feel. And so, like with Mercury, it relates to the third eye, the alchemical process of distillation. But you could also say, what's Mercury? Mercury's the third eye. It relates to indigo. And so you can also say, what do you feel when you experience indigo? When you experience the color red, the root chakra, the star of Saturn, which is a triquetra, which actually I have right here. That's the triquetra. And that they all have an interrelated, you could say, experience. And where I'm going at with alchemy and also working with these coils is when you're sitting with this energy, what is that energy without labels? And as you start to develop a reference point of your experience of what that feels like we have a reference point for joy. What does joy feel like? Well, that's the word we describe it. How does it feel? Well, it feels joyous. That's exactly what it is. But we use all these language and symbols to define what that really is when there is a base reference point of that energy. And so I want to create an environment right now to where it allows us to experience that, to understand that at the simplest level, to where then from that reference point of that simplicity of its essence, of feeling that essence, of where that essence can extrapolate to into greater definitions, greater understandings, greater complexities, which is almost like the egoic exploration of it, because we're defining it. We're bringing it into perceptual awareness of its existence. And so I think we could do a great exercise right now, and anyone watching can do this exercise. If you don't have one of my coils or coil by David, who left here, or from Twisted Sage, are the only 2 people I really know on the market. I know there's some other people making them, making different types of coils, a lot of it based off the work of Slim Sperling. Slim Sperling started making coils in '94. And the thing is, you can also use, you can take a coin, you could drill a hole through a coin, you could take a washer, a zinc-plated washer works, you can get a copper washer, you can get a brass washer, anything that has metal on the outside and nothing on the inside works. You dig a piece of wire and start wrapping it around itself several times. It's going to create the same phenomena. The thing with a coil like this, we're getting the geometry and the harmonics perfect. It's to the extreme. This is an idealization of Nikola Tesla's AC polyphase motor. This hexagram, the Star of David, the Seal of Solomon. Tesla intuited that flow form, that that structure of motion, of how time and space interacted, geometry and harmonics within that system, and that it's understanding how to create vorticular motion. And he put that into what you would call a rudimentary system. His polyphase motor was rudimentary, but it was very advanced at the time, and we are technically still using it in the Tesla motors today. But this is a simplification of this system. This goes through a lot of the technology I'm working on. As in, we have a wand here with a piezoelectric crystal, and this is a special type of transducer. This is working technology. It doesn't plug into anything. It doesn't have wires. This is a different aspect of technology where you start to understand the passive components within the system. That you don't need moving components to make things work. Solid state. And it's understanding solid state in a whole different way. And so, to even get a little background more on these coils, especially this one being the Seal of Solomon, Solomon was a high-ranking alchemist. Around 950 BC, built the Temple of Jerusalem, and he also supposedly he used, especially this one, to encase his genie, a djinn. And genie grants wishes, but the djinn is a reflection of the lower self with the higher self. It's like the gateway or mirror to the higher self. And the higher self has complete control of the matrix, you could say, but that's not where we're at with the lower self. So when you create that bridge, the higher self is able to facilitate how that, that interrelationship of reality, it being a matrix. You could say a computer simulation. And so this is the thing.
Out of this, I'm gonna fire some questions off as she asks them. She's like, I have tons of questions, so I don't know if maybe you guys should get on the phone together or something. But she's having a hard time doing the internet part. But she's blowing me.
Wendy?
Yeah, Wendy's like, I have tons of questions. Can you see or hear me? I need to ask them.
Yeah. I'm just gonna have her call my phone. I'll call Wendy right now.
Sorry to interrupt. You're going. It's awesome. I'm getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's something that I really like that you spoke to that I didn't hear the last couple of times that I've followed some of your information is the specificity of the geometry. Because so many people are messing around with various aspects of let's throw the minerals and the organic material making orgone and various things, but it's not always done to a specific geometry. And that's often where I wonder, if I'm about to go about making my own things or something, obviously, the energy is doing something specific based on the form that it's taking. So, hearing anything about just the nature of that specific geometry versus something that, is close but not exactly kind of thing.
Here, let me just check in with Wendy. Hey, Wendy? Wendy, can you hear me? I'll hear you, Wendy.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to. Yeah, I just think you said there's very latency.
Well, just message me on Facebook with your questions, and I'll respond to them, and they'll be answered.
I think that you can probably add me to the call again. My computer is disconnected.
Well, I can send you another. I'll send you another invite.
Okay, cool. Try that.
Bye. All right, I'm gonna send her an invite to. Where did you go? Well, Wendy is, for those who are patiently waiting, Wendy is the director of Evolver Asheville. She's been a huge supporter of mine over the years. Wendy. Nope. Collective noise at gmail.com. Wendy, invite. All right, there you go. She's invited. The thing with to finish up the idea with Solomon, just quickly, he understood how to use these as a practical tool. And I'm talking about this is one of the most powerful tools on the planet when we understand how to use them correctly. Also, when we understand how to make them correctly. There's a lot involved in that process. And so what I think would be great is to create coherence among us, is to do a quick exercise with the coils and to get a basic idea and walkthrough of how to use them. And then we can go into a Q&A session for the rest of this. And so I'm assuming everyone has a coil. And again, you can use a washer. Even a coin without a hole works. It doesn't even work close as good. But you're also working with metal. The reflective properties of the metal creates a waveguide, and so it's just a gradient of how they work. This one works ridiculous. I'll just tell you. I'm really happy about how this came out. I can speak more to this. When I was also saying how it reacts to intent is I put a thought into the center of the coil. This is the visualization exercise we're going to work on. And when that thought goes into the coil, how quickly does chi start moving through that coil? That's how the simplest way I can test how efficient these systems are. And so when I take my intent and I put it in the center of this coil, which means I disassociate from me and I associate with this coil, or the eye of the storm within the coil. When I do that, energy starts to flow through it because I'm putting awareness in it. I'm giving it a singularity. I'm giving it existence. I'm giving it flow. I'm giving it a spark of creation by putting my perceptual awareness in that. That's a whole metaphysical conversation itself, that fundamental process. But if we have faith in it, we can bring things to life, such as these coils. And how fast the chi builds up into it. You know? You could say I have my own notion of just how fast it builds without quantifying it. It's exponential in terms of that process. And so this responds faster than any coil I've ever made. The octograms respond great, the copper octograms. And they aren't geometrically perfect, but they really are wonderful. There's also an alchemical connection with all of them that I have. And so the exercise I did at Sonic Bloom 2 weeks ago involved the same thing, of where we disassociated from ourselves and associated with this coil. I want to give a little bit of some background information about this association and disassociation, because a lot of it involves the reference point. The reference point is the base aspect in dimensional theory. It's the zeroth dimension. It's a single point. It's a singularity. It's your reference point in space. And so, for example, the fundamental polarization of the universe is the infinitely small and the infinitely large. That comes from the infinite, which is the non-dimension, the undefined, God, infinite, whatever you want to call source. To polarize source, for source to experience itself, for God to experience anything outside of silence or pure potential, to experience some form of definition, there was a process of perception, and there's a polarization in that process, which is the infinitely small, which is the focalized perception, which is the masculine perception of something within the system, and the feminine expansiveness, the feminine letting go or forgetting of everything else in existence to experience this one thing. And so if I'm having a conversation with Kilo, I'm forgetting all of you in existence and putting all my presence and focus with Kilo in this conversation. That's the notion of truth, and that I'm fostering that polarization perfectly to the extreme. Nothing else exists except for Kilo in terms of my perceptual reality. And so it's this polarization that we have to engage to work this coil, is being fully present with the coil, forgetting you, forgetting your friends, family, existence, everything. That initial spark of life to get it going, to get it into motion, is this polarization. However, to really understand this polarization, you could say this is the mechanical process of spell casting in some ways with our perceptual awareness. Is also understanding your reference point, who you are. we're all God, goddesses, infinite creation, source, what have you, in a form of manifestation, a limited form of manifestation, because none of us are the true infinite, because we're a limitation, which is still unlimited in some ways. Our language is limited. That's a true limitation, is our language, as I express forth all of this. Is being aware of who you are, and when you fully understand your reference point and being comfortable with letting it go, it's like there's a notion when we do medicines that lets go of our ego, is getting comfortable with that process of being able to be fully present in the observation, in the universe, regardless of what's happening on. So to really master this technology, it's letting go of things that hold us back, like hate. Hate creates massive separation within the psyche. It creates, it's like a fragmented soul, because you're fragmenting yourself from creation because you hate that part of creation. And so coming into full acceptance allows us to disassociate tremendously. So there's many metaphysical or spiritual practices that we can take, that we can embody to encourage this polarization aspect. This, in a sense, relates to sitting down in meditation and clearing your mind and getting to that state. All of these aspects relate to it. There's many things we probably all engage in spiritual practice that helps facilitate this. And so, as I'm stressing this, is anything you can also come to your awareness of facilitating this disassociation, to put yourself into it. There's the evolution of the use of ketamine, which is I think a cat tranquilizer. It's a dissociative. Also the medicine datura, which is found in the Southwest. These are dissociatives that are really profound, that can help you engage or work on this process. Datura is a very, very dangerous medicine, so be very cautious with it. I don't really recommend it, actually. And ketamine is pretty common nowadays. However, these are, I think, I'm not sure if datura is illegal, but just throwing that out, that those are assistants. You do not need them. There's a lot you can do in terms of conscious willpower, being, I am choosing to let go. If you truly want to heal yourself, you're truly capable of healing yourself if you so choose. As in, one of the fundamental things left in my field I haven't let go of is because it's so painful, it's hard for me to consciously confront it. And when I'm capable of consciously confronting it, I can then choose to let go. And so a lot of this technology is the true conscious power of free will. And so before we go into it, the Star of David this is the heart chakra. This is a synthetic chakra. This is the flow form of the heart chakra. The heart chakra is related to gold. And so this is a unification of the micro and the macro, as above, so below. That statement also relates to the hexagram. And so this is these alchemical energies coming together. One of the notions is to command forth your intent, like I said, like a genie. This is a lamp. This intimidates the heck out of me. To have this power, at the same time, it requires a level of faith to truly command it forth. And so everything I'm talking about, I can do this exercise. I can work on this with you. I myself have not truly mastered it. And I'm not saying anyone's necessarily capable on the planet of mastering it, but this is the direction. This is the way we move forward in terms of working on it. How do we accomplish 100% faith and confidence in ourselves to command forth our intent into reality? And so this is a tool to help us get there, but this really isn't a shortcut, because it requires tremendous amount of spiritual practice and really embodiment to move it forward. And so let's go into a comfortable position. You can just be sitting in a chair or what have you. I'm pretty good sitting Indian style in my chair. You want to lay down. Whatever feels comfortable to you. This comfort's really the key thing, because it's a notion of letting go. This is like a float tank. And so a lot of people know me when they ask me questions. I sort of close my eyes or I look up off to the side, because I have to disengage from this reality. I have to disassociate to engage myself in that way. And I'm not saying you have to. You can actually transcend out of that. You can be fully present and engage that. You can be fully present and disassociate. That sounds like a paradox with what I said. It's possible. I myself am not capable of that. I just know I can reach that level without going there. So these are directions or ideals we can move toward with this technology and just spiritual practice in general. And so the idea that I would say before you disassociate and put your intent into the coil, a good practice, you don't have to do this every time, I never do this, let's just say, is to quickly check in with yourself. Be aware of yourself. Honor and recognize your reference point within the system. In that we're all connected to the same thing, we just have different reference points. And so as we accept collective consciousness, as we become aware that we're all one, and empathetically feeling, say, Kilo's thoughts and his emotions and his being and so forth, I'm aware of them, but I'm aware of my reference point. So I'm not going to confuse, say, his crankiness or his happiness from my own. And so I'm like, oh, no, Kilo's mad because something happened. I'm not going to let that affect me and affect my work. You know, I'm aware of it, though. And because I'm aware of it, I'm going to be like, hey, Kilo, can I do this to help your day? And that makes him joyous, and then we're all joyous, you know? Yeah. And so, but if I allowed his anger to, say, he's not obviously angry now, but if I took his anger on, then I'm not going to be able to embody that. And so, the reason I'm going to say this is, yes, let's honor ourselves and our reference point and who we are. And this little technique of starting here allows you to jump into the disassociation with ease, but also to return to it. Because one of the common things people do with taking, say, a lot of LSD is they go sort of insane because they disassociate so much they don't know how to reassociate back to themselves. And so a really good technique is being able to disassociate and reassociate, disassociate, reassociate. And so, what?
Oh, I know what that's.
Exactly. And so, putting the coil in your palm, you can also place it on your heart chakra or any chakra anywhere in the body. It's a flow form that interacts with the chakra. And there's something I want to speak to, but let's get into this visualization so we can get into Q&A. You can place it on your palm. You can place one hand over it. You can place it in your hand. You can just hold on to it. You can place it on your heart chakra, like I said, hold it up to it, or lay down and hold it onto it. There's so many different ways, but the most simple way I like to say is putting it on your palm chakra. I usually place it in my right hand. And putting our awareness into the eye of the hurricane, into the emptiness, into the pure potential of the coil. That's its singularity. That's its reference point to access this technology. And so let's all close our eyes for a moment and take 3 deep breaths in. And so your breath is the mover of chi. It's the vehicle of chi. And so as we breathe in, let's breathe out and breathe our awareness into the center of the coil. Forget everything else in existence, who you are, your family, where you're born, this TV show, every aspect of your being. Silent your mind into the silence of the coil. Feel yourself, your awareness in the center of the coil. And don't worry if you can't do it or this feels hard. Just listen to my voice and just flow with it, because you can always try again. I've been trying this for 8 years, and I'm just starting to slightly master this technology. And so as we place our awareness into the center of the coil, let's take a moment and just feel what it is to be connected with your coil. And as you're breathing, you'll start to feel chi move through that eye of the hurricane as it moves back and forth. And one of the things with this breath, with the disassociation though, it's actually coming to me intuitively when I was saying you can do both at once. The breath connects the coil to your being, to your physical body. And so it's the breath that's really profound. It's not even necessarily the coil that you're connecting to. It's the chi that's flowing around the coil, that's flowing into your body, that's flowing into your heart, and through all your chakras, through every tip of your being. It's connecting to that chi. But unlike, say, with placing hands on the body and moving chi normally through it, is you're feeling the chi around this flow form, moving in a toroidal knot. And it's amplifying. It's transforming in a specific qualitative way based on this coil. And that amplification then connects with the body. And so let's all take like a minute and sit with the coil as we breathe through it. And let's do an exercise in this minute as you breathe and get comfortable with it, of putting your own quality, your own spin, your own energy on this energy. Say love or honor, and let's imbue this flow with a specific energy. Okay. If you can't feel it, imagine it. Let your imagination take hold. Now, one other thing we're going to do is, because time and space don't exist. They are projections of our psyche. And so I have a crystal here. This quartz crystal was used in my workshop. And it's understanding how we can use these coils to imprint onto these crystals, which we all can do without this technology. It does do something a little different that I'm hard to like put my finger on. I could say imprints powerfully, but it's a different type of imprinting. And so I can place the coil inside the crystal. The quartz is synonymous with the hexagram. And so what I'm going to do is, we all have different coils, but all energetically connected, say, to my voice right now. Let's use a energy, the energy of Pendragon, Arthur Pendragon. Pendragon to unify this energy right now. And so I'm imprinting onto this coil the energy of Pendragon as its call name. And so if you take the coil in your hand and you connect to the energy of Pendragon, and it's also intelligence, is referring to this conversation we're having right now, as you connect to the energy of Pendragon, all these coils will be linked in this moment. And to program into that moment, or share collectively with each other, the energy of abundance, the energy of prosperity, and what it means to really feel prosperity, what it really means to feel abundance, and such as waking up in the morning without no anxiety, no worries, just love, feeling love, being love, just what you want to embody. If you could embody what you really wanted every day, then embody it right now. Let go of every single limitation. Let's pretend that doesn't exist. Let's pretend you're in your ideal being right now. Let's create a reference point within the universe for that being. And so you can program this onto a crystal. We're going to program it onto this one, which is what I'm holding onto the grid. This is something you can do yourself. But you can also do this with a coil, without a crystal, and just feeling what is your ideal direction as a being. How do you want to move forward on this earth plane? And the coil allows you to amplify that energy. It allows that energy to come into greater fruition on the earth plane. This actually amplifies your manifesting abilities by putting it into a flow of chi. And so, like, when I do fire dancing, I move a bunch of chi, I then can set my intent and release that chi. I can use the actual performance to cast forward spells. This is the notion of chi. Chi is like mana to make things happen. And so, I'm going to keep my hand, actually, we'll go, there we go. Keep my hand over this guy right here, and let's all focus on the center of the coil and imagine what it would like to be a state of prosperity, a state of abundance. Allow yourself to be in that state and feel it in the center of the coil, or send it. Let it embody whatever language you want to use, however technique you actually truly want to use. I mean, imagination is really key, but the imagination opens the door to feeling. When we truly allow it, we truly accept it. And it all comes as a surprise to me all the time, and so let it be a surprise to you. And so ideally I'd love to sit in meditations for a while, but not everyone's fully patient and present with that. We have 11 viewers right now. And so I encourage you to play. And so just like you see things in like Harry Potter or Airbender or Dragon Ball Z, whatever fantasy floats your boat, let that imagination be a foundation for how you want to interact with energy. Because there's actually, a lot of that there is truth. But the beautiful thing about imagination is the more you imagine things around you, when you actually are imagining something that's in alignment, it will click. It will open up that experience for you profoundly. And so I've spent forever, you could say, imagining how these coils work, how they flow, how my being interacts with them. And my imagination has created the doorway for a coherent perceptual feeling. And so, in a sense, I've evolved our imagination into creating a perceptual awareness that allows us to interact, to communicate. This is all a communication system, an information system, a computer. And so how do we develop a way to communicate? You could say, I've been working on a mouse this entire time to communicate with this system, except it's streamlined right here in front of us, and it doesn't need wires or batteries. And so it looks like Wendy's off at the moment. So Daniel, you're the one who really wanted to ask this. And so, or put this together. I know you got a bunch of questions. I think I'm just I'd love to just like have a conversation with you and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that that really did help a lot because I guess in my mind I was attributing it more to the inert qualities of it rather than the connected intention. Because as I've said with you, on my own, just playing and exploring, it's like I can feel something specific engagement when I hold it in my hand. Very similar to the way I feel like when using dowsing or anything like that. And definitely like sort of like call and response to and from the heart to the palm chakra while holding on to it. but I guess just not knowing how to engage with it created a lot of confusion, and I don't know what the specific question to ask is right now, because that pretty much covered a lot of it. It's you utilizing it and the way of approaching it that has all the difference between this just being an inert piece of metal around your neck and it being something much more powerful. I just dropped in deeper than I've ever been able to the past few times I've sit down to meditate. I felt a few different releases in my body. I actually hit that point of relaxation, just feeling that center and then spreading that and sorry, I'm talking ahead of myself. I'm getting excited. But yeah, so I guess, it's not so much needing to figure out all of the vortex mechanics or to understand every bit of research that you've put into it. Obviously, that would help you to create this. But from my point of view as someone utilizing it, all that intellectual understanding is really not necessary. And so I've been kind of stumbling over that, thinking, well, I've got to know specifics about this because I've got to utilize it a specific way. Maybe it has to do with the metal. Maybe it has to do with the electromagnetic field, and all these other things probably do and will come into play with it. But as far as what we're talking about, which is the perception of feeling the intent resonate with the technology and then having a concrete experience based off of that, is what I think you need to focus on communicating with people. And this video has just done a hell of a job, because I feel pretty much ready to go out and spread the magic. So I don't know, what do you feel?
Yeah, and so
Awesome. Does it matter that I have like an indentation in here? Like everything seems perfect except for one little spot. That's not gonna do anything, but like there's no imperfections that are going to create a loss of electricity.
So one of the things, this goes with like sacred geometry in general. This coil's perfect, and so the fractal interference patterns are going to be like near perfect. When you have imperfections, it just doesn't work as good. The octagram coils, in my opinion, still work really good. And so some of them, I get close to, a decent perfection, and they still perform mostly the same. And I'm speaking from this also from electrical engineering. If you build a resonance circuit and you're slightly off, it still works. It's just not as efficient. You get like in resonance circuits, you get something called the Q ratio. And you can say like the Q ratio on these coils might be like 100, where my octagram ones are like 20, And so they still resonate, they just don't resonate as well. And I can get a Q ratio that blows this one out of the water. And that's the technology I am working on in the real time with my sonic core system and so forth, in terms of how do I build these out crystalline materials, crystalline alloys and so forth. And so you can take a piece of copper and put it in a circle, and it does profound things. And so it doesn't require much. It's like, you could say like if this guy was imperfect, it does like half the job, or like even 4/5 of the job. It does a lot of the job. As I'm perfecting it, I'm just making it a little bit more worthwhile. I mean, it's like when I'm doing it, that relates to so many things in life, actually, in terms of like, well, we could get the product to this quality, but if we spend twice the amount of time, we're only increasing the performance by 5%. Are we going to put twice the amount of energy into it? It's like those are all nonlinear relationships. They're exponential, and so these are also nonlinear systems. And so the more perfectionist we get, yeah, we get more power out of it, but you still have a lot to work with. And so I've seen people make their own, and I guarantee they have profound experiences with them they make when they're even made by hand, and they're imperfections. And so don't let the imperfections hang you up, because you are perfection. This matrix is perfection. This universe is perfection. As long as you can communicate the command through, it's gonna get through. All right, here's a great example. Like if you're trying to like broadcast a communication to someone and you have a shitty radio, there's going to be a lot of static. But I'm on the other end. It's like, I can't hear him that well, but I got the message. It worked. It wasn't perfect, you know? And it's the same thing because I got the English. I got the message. Even though it wasn't clear, my intelligence was able to interpret what came across. It's the same with the Matrix. Our reality is super intelligent. Everything about it's super intelligent. So I was just like, I'll give a name, Pendragon. Boom, that links all of us, you know? You could even, I don't even need that specific because it's aware that everyone who's participating in this talk is in on this conversation, is in on this energetic exchange. And so like the idea of metaphysical technology, it's fucking easy. It's really easy because it's super intelligent, the computer. And we don't think it's super intelligent, but it is. It understands everything. And so when you want to give a command, it knows really what you're putting forth because it understands your intent. And so the idea is like, do you ever hear of serpentine energy? One-dimensional, linear, snake-like energy. This is chi. This is what you're working with these coils. And that's the first ray. The first ray of Saturn, the metal of lead. It's the metal, it's the ray of destruction, in that it's the ray of potential. And when you choose to invoke this first ray, you're collapsing God into like a defined potential in terms of, well, what potential am I thinking forth? And then you keep moving forward until that potential actually manifests, which is at the end of this, the 7 rays or the 7 alchemical processes. But the first ray is this polarization of God. And it looks like a serpent, a snake. And so when you're feeling chi, the coil is providing a wave guide for that chi to move around. That's all it's doing. It's a conductor. And that's what we call an electrical conductor. It conducts the music. It conducts the flow. You are entirely capable of creating this waveform structure without metal in the matrix of reality, in the etheric matrix. I've done it many times. It's very hard to translate that creation fully into this reality and collapsing. That's one of the things I'm working on. You don't need to rely on the coils. Every tool is an extension of itself. Are they training wheels? Amazing training wheels. Absolutely. And even down the road, we're still going to use them, but you don't need them. Your mind is fully capable of creating them. So yes, Daniel, maybe understanding some of the intellectual aspects will help creating them and put them more in motion. But in terms of just working with the coils firsthand, it's very perceptual. You really can just think it and put it into motion. And the notion is getting the feedback from the matrix of, I'm putting my intent in, what am I getting back? How is that feeling of that experience coming back? And that's the really important thing is developing that feedback with what you're sending out and how you're experiencing it.
I think that what was helpful for me, this guided meditation was super good because without the perceptual experience, it has been that paradox is very hard to wrap your head around. Like just trying to, the Sonic Bloom talk or whatever, just trying to hear you explain how it is sort of paradoxical and how it's the tool is the tool, but it's also not, it's you, and this is just sort of, I'm seeing as a gateway or a wormhole into that perceptual experience of being in that dissociative space and being cool with that and being able to move and operate from there rather than from the limited perspective, which is like, oh, I have this body, oh, my shoulder hurts, blah, blah. When you can step out of that and start operating from the place above that, such as in like dreaming or any sort of meditation or visualization, that's when stuff starts becoming more powerful. And so for me, I just had that experience where like I really was able to drop in. I took that sensation that I was feeling in my hand and applied it to everywhere else in my body. And, I got decompression in the fascia in my chest where I'm having tightness or, just a relaxing and a sinking in because I have sort of, gone into the center of the coil, so to speak, like jumped into the wormhole and then allowed the body to fully relax and do its own thing without interfering with it. So in that specific example, it's sort of like, whoa, it is the paradox because like
I need to get good at dissociating to put myself into the coil, to have the experience of the coil showing me how to dissociate better. And it is like that, and it is really hard to wrap your head around. And just hearing your talks, just seeing the technology without having one in your hand and being able to do what we just did, it's going to be difficult to like not be on the fence about it. Oh, this thing could be really great. I could really use this, but also maybe it's like I'm confused, because that has been my process. Is like, you know, that paradox can seem like, you know, where people get lost in sort of cognitive dissonance of their own beliefs. You know what I mean? And this is something, as we've just experienced tonight, that it's not like we do believe in it, but it is not something that we just believe works. Like there is an experiential, tangible thing with it, which, you know, I didn't really fully have 100% until we just did all of this now. Actually, with your original staff, I think I've had the most, just because I get my own movements into it, and just, you know, a sensation of weightedness and everything. So yeah, I think yeah, the questions that I did have probably don't even really matter, and they're not coming up off the top of my head right now. I think it really just comes down to finding you, getting one of them, either just taking the leap and checking it out if they think that something's worth it here, or like seeing whoever else you know that has a couple of them and getting to play with one for a little while, because it really is, I mean, you know, that just made it so simple and so like so tangible, so tangible. Yeah.
Well, again, this has all been like a big social experiment for me, in terms of like, how do I describe what I'm explaining, you know? And there's time like where I was just like, oh, this just came to me in terms of like a subtlety within my field that you could say sort of explored before, but I've not had to like describe it. And so the definition of it allowed me to describe it more. And so, I mean, the mind, it's all mind. This is all mind. And it's all very powerful. And so, I mean, even like this is my business card, is that coil. You can just visualize this coil. This is on my Facebook page, but you can also draw that coil out. Like here's a simple 7-pointed star, you know, that's the heptagram. And so that's how the ancients always did it. They drew it out, and they would cast those emblems on like a ring or what have you. I'm not sure if they actually made these pieces. You see, a lot of it is drawn straight line symbols. The alchemists, at least the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, they would say to inscribe that into beeswax in terms of making spells. I'd definitely say beeswax is the way to go over any type of wax. And there's lots of different ways to create that conception. However, the thing that's profound about the actual coils is how they move chi. And so what I'm also saying, where I'm realizing this while talking to you guys, as you disassociate with yourself and put your energy into the center of the coil, my perception is almost in the notion of always chi. It's always in terms of the flow of chi. And so when I'm putting my perception into the center of it, it's like there's chi flowing through me. All of a sudden, the chi is leaving my body and going right to my hand. And like it's the fundamental notion of pumping. Wherever my awareness is, it's pumping chi. If I'm staring at someone and spying on them from away, and they pick up that energy and they like, why is someone looking at me? Is because they're feeling my chi go from me to them in that perceptual process. And so it's also becoming really connected with what is the energy dynamics or flow forms around our perceptual process. And so as I'm tuning into that coil, and I already said this, but to make this clear, I'm feeling that chi, that breath flowing through my hand, but then I'm also feeling it go up my arm and into my body, into my physical breath. And so there's a difference between the chi breath and the physical breath, and also how those two unify together in specific meditations. And so there's a lot of exercises out there in terms of disassociation. A really common one is viewing a sphere, and you being inside a sphere, and the sphere encasing you, and the room, and the planet, which doesn't really work in the traditional sense, because how I see the planet and the solar system, and the solar system and so forth, that's shifting your level of awareness within the system, allowing yourself to disassociate from this level, human, to say, you know, overlooking our entire country, and then the planet, galaxy, so forth. There's lots of things you can do with that. And so sometimes I say the simplest technique with disassociation is just putting your awareness right here. It's like shifting it just slightly outside your body. And the more you get to do that, the more you will have faith in that your imagination isn't actually your imagination, that you're actually observing the world around you. And so that's one of the things, this notion of like quieting your mind is do you have egoic imagination going on, or do you have a divine imagination going on? And that there is a process in which you evolve into that full-time divine imagination, which is a letting go of yourself. It's really just, it's a letting go. And then when you don't separate yourself from the experience, the experience becomes you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that's broken through for me these past couple of years with dowsing and metaphysics and everything has been just detachment and non-doing. So almost where we're saying dissociation, I'd feel like, you know, some of the eye-gazing practices would be probably really good for just being like detached and in that observer role. And then as you're saying, it's like once you get so comfortable in that observer role from that higher vantage point, you know that you're not creating anything, and whatever you observe that comes in front of you then has to be something that, you know, it cannot be fantasy, because if it continues to come in front of you while you're in this detached point of view, you're not, you know, influencing it with your beliefs, you're not, you know, projecting, you're not imagining from the lower sense, you are viewing that higher imagination, because, you know, there's no influence on the small part of you. Or from the small part of you, rather.
Here, hold on, I'm adding, someone just asked to join. No, it's not popping up. I was trying to add Patrick. Patrick, if you post your email, I can send it to you. For some reason I can't get you from that list. One thing I did want to talk about, I mean, we keep going Q&A, but one of the important things to just talk about that's fundamental with the coils and like my research, when I'm talking about feeling those base essences and understanding those base essences, is how those translate into the coil designs. And so, for example, we have a pentagram, and the pentagram, that geometry is the star of Mars. It's the solar plexus. It's the metal of iron. However, the macro geometry is gold. And it's the boundary layer that's way more important than the actual material itself. The material is made out of stainless steel bronze, and so it actually has some iron energy already in it. That takes into the effect of the resonance as a whole, but what's really important is the boundary layer. So we have gold, so we have soul, and we have, so the micro geometry is soul, and macro geometry is Mars. And so these two energies affect how you experience this coil. If you then place it on your third eye, you then have the energy of Mercury. And so you have all three of these energies interacting in a specific way with this chakra. And so that's sort of like a foundational aspect in my research in terms of like, what is that quality? How do you understand that? And so where you're placing it in terms of chakras on the body, the material and the geometry are all different alchemical aspects in this process. And so you could say the Mars is like the external, it's the feminine energy. The internal is the masculine, the compressed. So I'm placing it on the third eye. Then we have Mercury, and so you have Mercury and Mars meeting, and the halfway point, that boundary layer in which is happening, is gold, is soul. And so that's a fundamental aspect in terms of the interactions of these technologies. Can I speak to all that? Heck no. That's all new training ground for me in terms of experience and really qualifying. However, what I will speak to is what I have the most profound experience with is the copper octagram. I've made like 150 of these, roughly. I say there's like 144 on the Earth plane. I'm doing a run. I'm starting a run today of welding a few. There's a few orders I still need to get out. I've been behind on a lot of stuff, and we're hopefully gonna do a huge run on these. I am raising the price of these to $99. So I'm consistently out of inventory. I like to keep them low, but it's pretty much supply and demand. I just need to raise my prices so I have inventory. I'm tired of being out of inventory. But I've worked with this for 6 years. And so the octagram is the star of Mercury. However, the metal is copper, and so it's the star of Venus. And so you have Venus and copper interacting in specific ways. I usually have this on my throat chakra or my heart chakra. And so this is the most experience I have with any coil and whatever energy. Without talking about the two chakras, I'm going to talk about the coil itself. Is the star of Mercury relates to alchemical downloads, accessing the Akashic record. A lot of the information I'm speaking forth right now is because of me using this technology for so many years that's allowed me to intuit and work with the Akashic record very powerfully to get these downloads. However, it's made of the metal of copper. Many times I've worn this on my throat chakra. And so copper is the throat chakra. And then I'm also wearing it on the throat chakra. It allows me to speak forth these alchemical downloads. It allows me to communicate the Akashic record. It allows me to be a mage, a messenger, a sage, communicating this energy forth. And so I've used it to help me understand my audience, my language, my way of projection of rhetoric into the world around me. That's been its tool to facilitate that process. When I wear it on my throat chakra, it really amplifies my ability to communicate forth these abstract, esoteric concepts to individuals and also understand my audience in terms of who I'm talking to. If I place it on my heart chakra, you could say I'm communicating less with the world outside of me and more with myself. It's allowed me to connect more to my higher self in relation to that Akashic record. It's allowed me to embody those energies more profoundly at my core sense of being. And so that understanding is well developed after just years of working with it. And so there's many of these different, you could say, medicines that I have to work with to some experience. And the more that we get people working with this magic, the more we can start to create an understanding or intuit that understanding into a practicality, into application. And really the old paradigm meeting with the new, in that we're jumping into a realm of perceptual science, which doesn't really exist on this planet at all. And as a foundation for people to understand this perceptual science, if you have someone with a split personality disorder, such as a fragmented soul, in one personality, they might be diabetic. You can draw their blood and they're diabetic. And all of a sudden, they shift into another personality. You can immediately draw their blood and they have a different blood type. Or they're no longer diabetic, or they're no longer allergic to bees, or so forth. It shifts instantly. This is one of the biggest flukes in fucking modern science. They can't figure it out. Because our awareness is the perception of ourself. One personality perceives them as diabetic, or they have a problem in their field that physically manifests as diabetes. Because all illness is just a manifestation of things that are unstable within our field. And so that was the really important thing I wanted to communicate in terms of also, hey, go explore with this technology and qualitatively learn, how does it work? How does it feel? What is the essence of this experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was just thinking that I needed to have knowledge about it, thinking I needed to understand it, and also treating it as a standalone thing. Oh man, is this thing around my neck just going to be manifesting things left and right? No, that's not really how it works. But yeah, I think that really you've laid the foundation for just getting in there and engaging with it, rather than just treating it as some benign tool. It's not really the tool without you. It's not going to do anything without you being present for the perception of what it's doing. And that kind of is a really difficult way to put into verbs, because once you're dissociating to experience something without an association to it, it's beyond the words anyway. We can use the symbols, and that's one thing that's always I've been found confusing to me, is that the colors of the chakras and these various, well, they can take on different qualities at different times. So just because that symbol is the way that has been described for a certain energy, it's more important to look beyond the symbol at the energy itself than get caught up in, you know, oh, well, we thought this was the Mars and this, you know, and like you're saying, there's multiple layers to when you have a certain metal that represents something, and then a certain geometry that represents something, and then a certain part of the body or a certain intention, or maybe a certain group of people working with one coil with 3 people versus 5 people, or, you know, all of these things. So it's cool to see that we're just at the beginning of like, okay, yep, it's definitely doing something. I'm acknowledging it. It's acknowledging me. Now let's see what happens when we change up the set and circumstance around the use of it.
Absolutely. Man, well said.
Yeah.
Patrick just joined us. I'm not sure if this cuts off in 10 minutes, but this technically ends in 10 minutes. Do you have a question you want to throw out, Patrick?
No, not really. I got a lot of good ideas from this, like a brilliant amount of reminders.
Is that Patrick Araya?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, hey, long time no see.
Again, Daniel. How you doing?
Good. I'm probably gonna split though. Actually, it's getting late over here on the East Coast, so I'll probably take off. But this was awesome. I appreciate it, and I have a few people I've given these to that are gonna now watch this. So we'll be getting together with them for sure and experimenting and playing. And
I think it close out this other thing.
That's
good.
And that's one of my goals with raising the prices is I can get more away. And so, and then there's also a notion of using them symbiotically together, such as like the Star of David. This one doesn't fit right. I'm actually getting some printed where I can finally stack them with the right ratios. The Star of David inside the octagram. This is the 8-2 octagram. It skips every 2, where this one skips every 3. So double triangle, double square. And this is on the cover of the oldest copy of the Old Testament. Is the hexagram within the octagram. I've always related to a powerful concept within free energy, within self-organizational energy systems. And so we're really just tapping the surface of where this can go. This relates to the traditional mathematical study of knot theory. And it's sky's the horizons. It's new territory. The biggest thing I'm relaying is with anything is, hey, I've been working on this 8 years because I've understood how it's affected my perceptual awareness experientially, and it's profound. It's super profound. And I've just been understanding the language in terms of how to articulate these experiences and guide people to have these experiences. And a big part is the disassociation. And that's a term I haven't ever used until, you could say, a month ago in regards to these coils. And so we could wrap it up here. I am selling these on my website, gregor.ninja and energy-stripe.com. I'm about to raise all my prices across the board. One reason is so I can gift, so I can have a sliding scale. Something I already do, but I do it too much, and it's been hurting me financially. And I'm hanging out with, you could say, some powerful people who are willing to pay those prices. And there's the notion is, if these coils do really what I say they do, or what we're experiencing, then they are worth way more than they're being offered. And I'm saying all this in terms of how I'm applying my time daily on so many things. It's not just working on these coils, but the systems I'm working on developing. And while I'm here in Los Angeles securing funding and so forth, we might be moving a group of us to a property just outside of LA, 2.5-acre property, and doing some really awesome work. I'm really excited about that, and creating a really safe alchemical container to move forward these ideas. But any support is super helpful. It's amazingly helpful, and it's really taking these technologies to a whole new level, even beyond the perceptual game. The perceptual game is where I'm at. That's my love. That's my passion. It's really hard for a lot of people to jump on that bandwagon. I understand people want to see things tangible with their eyes right here in front of them, and we're working on that as well. Because it's when people see things that are outside their normal construct of belief, like when I'm speaking about a troll, you know, it's stuff like that. It's eye-opening. It's awakening, and people have seen many crazy, out-of-the-world things on this planet. And it's those experiences that really shift the norm for us, being like, did this really just happen? And it did. And so...
I'm right there with you, Greg. I mean, I don't know if we've talked about it yet just because we've been in Communicado for a while, but I have a story for you, actually. Very similar along those lines.
Well, you got 5 minutes if you want to share it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, with or without technology, you know, 2 summers ago I was up staying with my bodywork mentor. He's a seaweed harvester up in Maine. I don't know if you're familiar with him. His name's Larch Hansen. Our mutual friend Charlie went up there for a while. I got connected with them. But I was up there taking full advantage of it. He's a Dzogchen Buddhist. He's an amazing body worker. Meditation room on the top floor. No internet, no cell phones. My 6 weeks was like totally devoted to practice, and I was fasting every day, and I was doing a lot of this deep, intensive work with intention and everything. And there was one day where I got called away from chopping my wood, and I was really into chopping wood at that time because it had gotten to that point where it was easy and it was sort of like distraction from deeper work. And so I got called away from chopping the wood because Larch was up in the tree cutting the tree down, and they were afraid he was going to fall out. So he's this 70-year-old man's up at the top of an 80-foot tree in Maine cutting it down with a chainsaw. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to put my attention into now? I have not even my work, my physical labor that I love so much to like be my breath work and do my meditation through that. So I had to just sit on this stump and accept defeat that I was just going to have to be present and not do anything. And I looked up in the tree to see where Larch was, and to the left in the sky, as if somebody had layered a perfect Photoshop filter over it, was, you know, 100-foot span, full detail of like Oriental dragon with like the whiskers coming out and the claws, and I was immediately struck with the most like shattering awe and like this is happening and I can't express anything or tell anyone. There's no one around. My teacher's up in a tree. Am I really seeing this? Am I going crazy? Have I not eaten enough food for 6 weeks? You know, so I started getting to that level where just like something that really shouldn't have been there by all intents and purposes. And I know recently you've been saying in the Sonic Bloom talk and stuff, you know, like the magic doesn't exist because we say it doesn't exist. The dragons don't exist because we say they don't exist. Well, I'm telling you, man, the dragons exist. They're coming back.
I mean, the last 4 months, I've spoken about dragons, bringing it up in conversations, and other people talking about more than my entire life. It's just been Dragon City.
I love dragons.
But
Yeah.
I had a very visual, I don't know if it was like, you know, being in unfamiliar territory, what the hell do you see something in broad daylight that's obviously not a dream, obviously not a meditation trance? Like, you know, that was some serious, like, you know, shit being cracked open in front of me, and I was just, like, sitting there observing it, like, what is my role in all of this? So, I mean, you know, the game's wide open. You know, we can start with just being in that, using these tools to reach that point of detachment enough to let things start getting weird, and then get comfortable with it all getting weird, and then see really where it's going to go from there.
That's a great way you just put it. Great way.
Anyway, that's that. So, trolls, yeah, I'm on board, man. Bad science,
Well,
magical creatures, space and time travel, we're going to do it.
awesome. So I could end this talk on what I'm working on. I just got a provisional patent like a little over a month ago. We're seeking around 100,000 funding, initially out of $500,000, to develop the Sonocore system. And the Sonocore system is the industrial production process that takes any raw material and breaks it down to the atomic level, the smallest particulate possible. This allows me to then, everything is then has discrete resonances. And so this is the alchemical process of dissolution. Now I can engage in the alchemical process of purification. I can separate the materials into their component aspects. And so I could take a gold coin, pulverize it, 99.999% gold coin, pulverize it, take out those impurities, and recast it, and it will be 100% gold. That's huge. That's really huge in terms of our manifestation abilities of how we can utilize 100% gold. when it doesn't have those impurities in it. And this goes for any material. This is making structural steel that can hit its maximum tensile strength. And so when you can cast it at 100% purity, you can then do a process called annealing where you can recrystallize it, and it can become a single crystal. This could be a single crystal of gold, and that creates profound abilities in terms of how it resonates with our awareness. And that goes for the wands too. That goes for so many aspects in our reality, not just the metaphysical tools, in terms of how it translates into the evolution of the present moment. It just gets juicier. And at the same time, it allows me to create a bottleneck on the material supply of the planet and start redirecting our energy supply into much needed attention, such as with healers, conscious community, the permaculture sector, transformational festival scene, transformational media, you name it. You know, let's wake the planet up.
Amen.
So, well, it's 8 o'clock. I think it's still going, but let's call it here. Thank you for everyone who's listened and participated. We got 7 people at the moment. We had up to 10 going. This is going to be, I believe, still up on YouTube afterwards on my channel. So thank you, everyone. Blessings, and enjoy the rest of your evening.